You want to know how I probably figured this was going to be one of the worst movies of the year when I saw it? When I saw this today, my theater was completely empty. There was nobody in that theater but me. So one guy in the projection booth had to do his job just because I paid to see Action Point. Action Point is a movie that, for some reason, is being shown in theaters and exists. Basically, it stars Johnny Knoxville as the owner of this theme park called Action Point, which is pretty much like a tiny, small carnival type amusement park. Nothing big like Disneyland or Universal Studios. And pretty much the whole movie is him struggling to keep it open and coming up with all these different methods to keep it open and make it more exciting to drive attendance up. Meanwhile, he has to spend time with his daughter and bond. And you know what? The rest of the movie doesn't fucking matter. Because the whole point of it is to pretty much do a bunch of jackass type stunts without actually doing a jackass movie. And that's exactly what this turd is. So even though I said that this is an excuse to do a bunch of jackass-like stunts, this is really not technically a jackass movie because MTV has nothing to do with it. It's not in the vein of Bad Grandpa, where that movie is pretty much Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa. But it does feature two Jackass alumni starring in the film, Chris Pontius and, of course, Johnny Knoxville. And this movie from the trailers didn't look all that good to begin with, but I consider myself a casual fan of Jackass. I've never actually seen the show, but I've watched the movies, and for what they are, they're pretty entertaining. I think the third Jackass movie is actually pretty clever because they come up with all these inventive stunts that utilize 3D cameras. Bad Grandpa was okay, but it's just kind of proof that Jackass movies don't need a plot. It's the equivalent of putting a ball and chain onto an Olympic athlete. It's gonna really slow down their progress and make them not as good as they were before. But with Action Point, I hate this movie so much. The best word that I can use to sum up Action Point is random. This movie is just nothing but randomness going on. There is a thread of a plot in there with trying to keep the park open, but really, like I said, this is just an excuse to do a bunch of stunts, which are actually not all that inventive. They're actually pretty lame, and all of them you see in the trailer. There are no stunts that you miss out, and these things just really happen at random. I hate to keep using that word, but it's almost like the movie stops for a second to do these random, unnecessary, and not funny stunts. Because when I think of all the stunts that they did back in the days of Jackass, they might have been random, sure, but there was no plot into it, so you could just watch them for the stunt. And sometimes they would just go all the way and be inventive, whether it make you laugh your ass off, like the high five in Jackass 3D, or make you gross out, like the Poo Cocktail Supreme in Jackass 3D. You can tell which one of those Jackass movies is my favorite. But with Action Point, it's just dull, and it's never funny. And given that this is supposed to be a comedy, that's the biggest crime any comedy can commit, when it's not funny, tries its damnedest to be funny, but never comes across as funny. That really hurts a lot. And when you get to the actual plot of the film and watch it, these characters are terrible. First of all, Johnny Knoxville and Chris Pontius are terrible actors. Unless they're playing themselves, standing in front of a bunch of bulls, or just getting full-on naked, then they're not really good actors at all. And they have charm, but you gotta learn how to act as well. But aside the fact that there's no good performances here, these characters are terrible human beings because they are reckless, they commit a lot of crime, and they just don't care about what's going on at all. Chris Pontius is supposed to be playing a lifeguard. He does no active lifeguard duty at all, and he lets a bunch of people drown or struggle with swimming. And just the way this park is run, it would have not lasted a day with all the accidents going on and how much nobody gives a fuck. So it's a miracle that this park even lasted for as long as it did in this film. And like I said, there's a lot of crime being committed where they break into buildings, they steal lumber to use for their own park, and there's no repercussion to what's going on. Nobody gets in any kind of trouble. It's just overall lazy. And there's one element to this movie that normally I cannot stand, which is a term that I first heard back in the days of Spill.com, which is the Disney dad. Basically, this revolves around a character who is a father and tries to spend a lot of time with their kid, but they're so focused on their job and trying to make a profit that they're pretty much ignoring their kids. Usually I hate this cliche because the dad's just trying to make a living just so he can provide for his kids. But this is the first instance where I'm actually going against with what the dad is doing, because this is a shit park to begin with. It's a complete failure. There's so many accidents that I'm surprised there aren't any lawsuits. So you don't care for this guy at all, and in a way you kind of want Action Point to fail. I'm talking about the park and not the actual movie, because from what I've been hearing, this movie didn't do well at the box office this weekend, which I wouldn't be surprised since I was the only person in my theater. So I don't really have anything else to say about Action Point, because if I continue talking about this, I'm going to just go on a full-on rant because I hate this so much. It's only the beginning of June. We're halfway through the year, but so far, this is the worst movie I've seen this year, and I'll be shocked if I see something worse than Action Point. If I could describe this movie in another way outside of the word random, it would be a quote that Johnny Knoxville's daughter in the movie says. This right here is one continuous train wreck. And that ironically sums up this entire movie, because not only is it not funny, but it's just kind of lazy, it's too long, it's sexist, and it's surprisingly racist at points. And there's one moment in this movie where I ultimately knew how I was going to feel, and you could say spoiler all you want, but you're not going to see this movie. Basically, it involves Chris Pontius breaking into an office building while, for some reason, two people are having sex in there, and then when the guy climaxes, some of the semen drops on Chris Pontius's hand, and it's at that point where I was just like, okay, I wanted to be nice. I wanted to say don't waste your money, but with that scene right there, burn in hell movie. You automatically earn the burn in hell rating for something shitty like that. Oh, and then Chris Pontius has a dog who licks the semen off his hand, and I'm just like, yeah, I already know how I feel about this movie. Go burn in hell. And that's my review for Action Point. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, if and when you've seen it. Don't forget to support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until next time, this is the Real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.